Hi, Jenny from America, Nowheresville, America, here in the middle of her hillbilly state. Just wanted to give you my opinion on what I believe is could be Shuli's personality. Just as I have such an experience working for a number of years in a highly academic, university-based hospital. Although I did not work with neonatologists there, I work with adult medicine and surgical academics, you can kind of put them into a wonderful a box and kind of explain what their personalities are usually like. Um, Now, Dowie Evans believes that he was this high-ranking, intellectually wonderful academic, and he strutted himself around like a peacock, as if he knew everything, and the wise sage. Well, guess what? That's what Shuli was. Shuli too struts around, and I shouldn't say struts, but walks around with such an air of confidence to him, just like Dowie. But guess what? He's earned it, and you know what? He's got that brain power. Now, my experience often with a lot of these academic physicians is a lot of them came from a background that wasn't very, shall we say, cushy. Some of them not even middle class. There was one physician that I knew that came from the hills of the Appalachia, was like one of 10 kids, and basically talk about pulling yourself up from their bootstrap and going to basically the pinnacle of surgery in his field. He was just a phenomenal gentleman. In fact, I even did surgery on one of my family members and did it very well. I was very, very happy with him. Basically, Shuli, if you're going to play in the sandbox with him, you got to be able to make sure that you can kick sand as well as he can, because otherwise he will put you in his place. Now, Dowie thought he could put everyone in his place and acted as if he could. Yeah, nothing like Shuli. And basically, that news conference that was back in February, although you may think it was directed at the world or directed at those judges, no, Shuli damn well knew that these judges were idiots when it came to any scientific endeavors. What he was doing, he was aiming it to the colleagues of these consultants, but in particular, his aim was even more focused on and did more damage to Ravi and Dowie. Richard Taylor did a beautiful job of eviscerating Brewery in the December news conference. Well, Shuli just followed up to Ravi and Dowie, and I believe mainly because those two had the balls to use his research. Now, research to these academics is a sacred cow. It's like a child to them. Doing this research is so difficult. First of all, getting the grant funding to it is just nothing but, it's like you're planning the next battle or something like that. It is so difficult. In addition, once you get that research done, you have to submit it to a journal, scientific journal, and you want to get into the good one. And then you have to undergo something called peer review. Oh my God, it is painful. Those peer reviewers will pick it apart. Like I talk about, the ultimate nitpicking is what they do. And it is painful. They will, to the point where they'll even force you to change your, however, sentences in your research and all that hard earned work. And Shuli himself probably could have been a peer reviewer for some certain publications too. So the fact that he got 400 of these things through, oh my God, that is just absolutely incredible. He may have even forgotten about that famous research that that Ravi and Dowie used. It was probably so long ago, and I would imagine guess he would be like, oh, I forgot I did that paper. That was so long ago. And I probably had to go and look it up and do it and such, because that was so old school. That was so back. That was, although you wouldn't call it back in the Stone Age of neonatology, that would have probably been the 60s, 70s. This was, I think, of the 80s, 90s. And before before surfactant came, which was a game changer, and things like CPAP and all the various ventilation methods came too, and that would have been kind of the 90s, early 2000s. Think of this as a period, and the period in history where it was just right before the light bulb was invented. And that light bulb in neonatology would have been surfactant and all those wonderful ventilations that they would have done. That was an absolute game changer. Basically, all that paper was just because they had to use such high force, such high ventilator settings and certain neopuffs, certain, not neopuffs, but certain, bagging techniques and stuff in order to just open these lungs up and to keep them open, because they didn't have the surfactant and the other technology in order to do it. And it was just his way of saying, hey guys, we got to do this high pressure ventilation and stuff here, that we could blow their lungs out and it could go into what we would call the lung blood vessels, and that's how it would get into the skin, into the circulation, would get into the skin. It was just basically just saying, hey, be on the lookout for that. And that the paper is no longer needed, per se. And the fact that Ravi had to go look for that just tells you something. He had to look for some old paper that just basically is not pretty much needed anymore. And the fact that he didn't understand that this was not a venous air embolism, or Dowie didn't. This was basically what it was is the high ventilator or the high pressure that they do would blow through the tissue of these delicate lungs and into those important blood vessels in the lungs that would return blood back to the heart, and then that would just shoot it out to the air embolism would shoot out into the arterial, which is the blood that's going from the heart out to it and makes your skin. That's what, makes your skin nice and to flush to some degree. Not and that's how it would present itself on the skin. Versus the venous, which it's after it's gone through the skin. It's the return back of deoxygenated blood back to the heart. The fact that Dowie and Ravi couldn't understand a paper that I could to some degree understand, just shows you what just absolute dumb shits these I'm not going to call them gentlemen, these things were. Now, and again, if you're going to mess with someone's research, you're messing with their child. Their hard earned their work, their masterpiece. It's like a painting. It's like this painted this thing and someone threw paint on it. Well, you're going to have, obviously, he's going to fight that as he should. They've done that, none of that work. He's done all the work. And Shuley wants people to take his research and do it in good. And if you use it for bad, and especially you're going to use it toward a nurse, be prepared. Be prepared. Now, in yesterday's video, I kind of explained what a neonatologist was and kind of the mindset. No, erase that from your mind when it comes to a Shuley. And those gentlemen are wonderful that I talked about. They're in the trenches. They have to be very empathetic, very congenial. Oh boy, do they rely on those nurses. And they have to have that wonderful personality. And it's really a thing. And if you look at Richard Taylor, that he is that. Well, Shuley has the brilliance of a neonatologist that's in the trenches. Remember I said this was the smartest kid in the class in math class. In addition, he has to go past that. Shuley did his residency, his fellowship for neonatology at Harvard. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he got a PhD in healthcare economics from Harvard. And again, we're talking statistics here, okay? Economics, statistics. And again, Harvard would never accept you into any of their programs if you weren't the creme de la creme, as he would say. So he obviously proved himself in his residency in pediatrics, which I believe he did in Canada, enough for Harvard to say, oh yeah, come on board, you're wonderful. And by the way, if you want to get a PhD, by all means. And wonderful, he took that too. Now, if you can remember that a famous press conference he did in February, yes, he eviscerated every single one of those consultants, and to some degree the trainees too. But let me tell you, he even eviscerated. In fact, he even hung, drawn, and quartered Ravi and Dewey. And I think it was purposely done because they took that and because they did that paper and they did, it was like, how dare you? Essentially, I created this knife. It was only meant for good, but you took it and you stabbed a nurse. Oh boy, am I going to take you out. He was not, at conference, you think it was, excuse me, I do apologize, it's my throat situation. That conference, you think it was aimed at the world, aimed at the judges, the appeal judges and stuff like that? No, no, no. I could see through it. It was aimed at the colleagues of Ravi and Dowie, because he damn well knows that's all these guys got. They don't have, unlike Shu Lee, who's got interests in other things. He's a farmer now. He's a health economist. He doesn't need. He didn't need that neonatology job to prove himself. He had that much confidence in himself. Well, Dowie, all he's got now is this, his trial, which was a failing business. That's why he had to go out and do it. And then Ravi, he was a failure as a pediatrician. That's why he went out for the media thing. Well, he just took him out. And again, he took out the last of what they had. And he made them appear like they were an absolute laughingstock to the medical community and especially to the physicians too. Shu Lee looked like this sweet little gentleman, laughing, smiling, making jokes. Oh, those jokes were aimed straight at Ravi. Remember when he said, "Oh, he laughed. That's the sound of an alarm." That had everything to do with the fact that, and even he specifically made sure he stated when he went through the baby K information about the alarms being turned off, and that was David Davis's, I think his watch turned out as a reminder, or his watch or his phone went off. He said, "Oh, that's what an alarm sounds like." And then if you remember later on in the press conference too, there was some issues with papers or something. They weren't quite in order. He said, "Oh, I guess I need an alarm to remind me how to do this too." Another dig right at Ravi. It wasn't funny he was trying to do something with David Davis. He was aiming that sword right to them. And if you can recall, if you remember when someone had asked him about Dowie Evans, or they asked him about the police, he goes, "I don't know anything about the police." Okay. But he specifically said those 3 questions. Ask him. If you come across Dowie, ask him these 3 questions. And these questions, he's always asked, if you get my drift. These academics have unbelievable high standards for themselves, but you darn well better believe those trainee doctors that they are training, they better hold those same high standards. And if they find a knucklehead or someone who is just, let's say, a little too cocky or a little too confident and need to be put in their place, they have no problem taking them out, as they should. Now, someone who may appear to be cocky or confident, a trainee doctor per se, is not. It could be a mini-me Shu Lee. Again, if they would challenge them, Shu Lee would recognize it and acknowledge it. Had no problem. Shu Lee is also the type that these high academics, if a nurse would say something to him and was correct, again, they're not going to deal with anyone that does not live up to standards. They will listen to him. Shu Lee is also the type that basically, and he's under more pressure from the inside than he is from the outside. Even though that outside pressure is immense, that inside pressure, oh, I made a mistake. Oh, something's not going right. And they take it to heart when something doesn't go right. They don't need a lawyer to sue them or anything like that. They do it to themselves. And sometimes that pressure can get to them. They're human. They do what every one of us are doing when we're under pressure, when we make a mistake. And sometimes they may take it to some degree out on someone else inappropriately. I am guilty of this. There isn't a human being on this earth that is not, okay? And I bet one of the reasons he fought so hard for Lucy, I bet he remembers a couple of times that bowed to inner pressure and outer pressure, and he may have said something or may have had an attitude toward a nurse that was inappropriate. But I can guarantee you, the minute that stress relieved, he turned around and he apologized to that nurse. I can guarantee you, it's either as a one-to-one, or they actually would apologize. They have, some of these academics would have no problem apologizing as a group. All right. So it just tells you the degree of difference between Ravi, with that grievance thing, and a Shu Lee, who would have, no nurse would have ever taken him to a grievance thing, because we know these guys are under a lot of pressure, and sometimes they do say something, and a good, wonderful nurse will write right back, and they will step aside and shut up. A good nurse can do it. And again, it's just a temporary thing that we know. Also, Shu Lee knows that he doesn't have, although in name, technically he's running the unit and he's the head of the unit, but he knows damn well it's the nurses that are, especially that head nurse, and those experienced nurses too, that that unit is clean because of that. Protocols, that research protocols that he set. You have to set, there's certain times with certain protocols if they're under certain research project. Well, who do you think makes sure that that protocol is being met? It's the nurse. Who do you think? Again, keeps an eye on these trainee doctors? Shu Lee doesn't have the time to train these doctors as much as he would like, or keep an eye on them as much as he's like. He's doing 20,000 different things, okay? So he absolutely relies on those nurses, those mama bear nurses that I tell you about, to keep an eye on them. And I can guarantee you there were some that have come probably to him and said, okay, this trainee doctor is a problem. He listens to him, and he knows. And many, like I said, many of these neonatal nurses, they stay on that job. They stay in that unit for decades, and he has come to appreciate them. There is this just utter mutual respect between those two, and absolutely, he relies on them so much. But more importantly, it's not him that's relying on him. He realizes that the babies would not survive unless you have a good nurse. And I can guarantee you, there may have been times in that unit where it was understaffed with the nursing and stuff like that, or the nurses weren't given the support that they needed. I have no doubt that Shu Lee went behind the scenes and took care of it and said something. He doesn't have the time to deal with all this stuff. Again, he's also brilliant too. And part of me is wondering that if maybe the Cheshire Mercy transport thing, yeah, it was probably set up by a neonatologist, but it wasn't set up by a neonatologist like Shu Lee. And again, Shu Lee, especially with that health economic background and statistical background and this neonatal background, he can take that box and stretch it and do it. And I just could imagine maybe if that transport team, because he set up, one thing he's noted for is that he set up the protocols for the Canadian neonatal transport. And again, if that Mersey, Chester, whatever that North Wales thing, if they had a Shu Lee on board, it's certainly, and again, you cannot blame the transport team. Mistakes would be made. I mean, anytime you have a process, you can expect mistakes. But again, he would have thought of these before, and I have this feeling less mistakes would have been made. And I can guarantee you he would have taken every single mistake that would have been made too hard, and he would have sat and he would have just tinkered with it until he had it figured out. And again, Canada, oh my God, I can't imagine someone having the brains to figure this out, because Canada is so big. It doesn't have a lot of money to begin with. It doesn't have a lot of industries, but what it has is all this wilderness, backcountry. The difficulty of getting this baby from here to there and figuring it out. Plus, there's not a whole lot of money for their medical programs too. So you are limited in the amount of neonatal units that you can have, figuring this all out. And again, he was given some high level award, Canadian award, kind of just for this too. So I'd imagine if there was a big screw up in that transport thing, he wouldn't have done it. he wouldn't have gotten that award. Now, let's go back to those three questions that when he was asked about in the press conference, that first question, oh, well, what do you think about the police or this or that? And, what do you think about Dowie Evans? And he basically said, well, I don't know anything about the police. I'm just here just to figure out the medical stuff. And he said, okay, well, if you just happen to come across Dowie, ask him these three questions, and these would have been the similar questions he would have used to take out a really bad trainee that was just probably he was at his Shuli's wit's end and probably thinking, he's this close to getting thrown out of the program. And I've seen them thrown out too, as they should be too. And basically, remember what he said, the first one, he said, well, we saw all these medical mistakes. How did Dowie miss them? That question would have been to that trainee doctor that is not living up to standards. You couldn't see these mistakes that either you or whatever made? You can see them. It's right here in the face. Second question he asked, well, he was very selective in his choice of diagnostic criteria used to make that diagnosis. And he even said, well, you said this kid was insulin poisoned, and yet you missed this one, blood sugar level too. And again, that question would have been put to that trainee that he went under him, would have been, you missed this and that lab value, you used only this lab values and made that diagnosis. Had you used this one, it would have been something different, and it would have made all the difference in the world. And then the third question was, why did you go look for malfeasance when there wasn't one? And again, that trainee doctor would have been, well, why did you look for this diagnosis when there was no criteria for it? And he was able to prove and again, how he took out Ravi. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was epic. That jokes he was making in that press conference. And it was like, when someone's phone or watch went off, an alarm, and he basically said and smiled, that's what an alarm sounds like. And that was an absolute dig toward Ravi. And he wasn't making a joke to make a joke. He was making a joke to stab. All right, as he should have. And I'm so glad he did it. And it was just basically, if you remember with Baby K, the accusation was that, Lucy turned off the monitor so no one would hear it. He was like, what am I not? Alarm set out. And again, later on in that press conference, there was something to the effect of, there was some kind of like the papers weren't in order for him. And he kind of basically said, I need an alarm here to kind of help me kind of get along. The second jab to him. That example he used. But the garden hose, that was purposely used as an example like a kindergartner to show that Ravi had the brains of a kindergartner, okay? There's a lot of, my granddaughter's a kindergartner. She's too smart. Again, Ravi hasn't progressed past the kindergarten stage is what I should say, a kindergarten stage in medicine. And remember when he said, you take a garden hose and you put something on the end of it and you try to inflate that, let's just say a balloon. Instead of just taking that garden hose and breathing, blowing out and inflating the balloon, you put a straw in that garden hose. It's not going to inflate. That's a brilliant example of that. Brilliant example. And again, I just so much respect for him. And I'm so grateful that he did all this. But, he did it. He did it. He did it as a way to thank nurses that were in his career. And I think he knew that he would not have made it in his career and to that pinnacle of career if it wasn't nurses doing all those, yeah, I'm going to call them little things, but they're not. And he knows they're not little things, but all that wonderful stuff and in that wonderful collaborative thing. But I think he was also thinking of the times that he may not have been the best that he should have been toward a nurse. And he's never forgotten, and he's always taken it to heart, and it is something that will carry with him, and he probably feels like I owe it to nurses. You know what? We respect him even more. And I would imagine he probably still has some wonderful relationship with some of the nurses he's worked for years. And if you remember on that panel, there actually was a nurse. and she's from Canada. And I have this feeling it was probably a nurse that he worked with a long time and had a wonderful relationship too. Again, Shuli and those types, they have the right to strut themselves out like a peacock because they are a peacock. They have that. They've earned that beautiful plumage. Dewey and Ravi, they're just not but a tiny little, they're not even a hummingbird. Hummingbirds are beautiful. What would be lower than a peacock? A dodo. And they're extinct. There we go. They're dodos and they're stupid and they deserve it. And he, again, took it out. Now, a lot of you are, again, feeling, oh my God, nothing has really progressed past this news conference. I can guarantee it has, because remember, Dowie and Ravi have nothing. They're so stupid. Dowie had to go to work, his legal work, and that business was failing. That's why he reached out to the thing. I mean, he was making hardly any money, and it was failing. So he had to seek out this thing. And he probably wasn't that great of a doctor. That's probably why he probably retired relatively early. And then Ravi, well, he knew he was crap as a doctor, and he had that media. Well, that just destroyed that. And these really stupid, arrogant SOB doctors that are obviously in the minority, and I am happy to say to you that they really are in the minorities. The vast majority of them are wonderful physicians and working hard in the trenches. They're just, again, you don't embarrass them in front of their colleagues, and Shuli did. Shuli doesn't care. He doesn't care what I can guarantee you, he does not care what Dowie has said about him or anything like that. He doesn't need to. He knows he's got it. He's got it. He's got that brain. He's got that earned confidence. And the fact of the matter is, I think it's kind of funny. He called himself retired, which I had to laugh at because he's not retired. He's still, to some degree, involved in the neonatal, all that stuff in Canada. But he retired to a Canadian farm. Farming to me is not retirement. And I can kind of picture him to some degree on his tractor or doing everything like that, trying to figure out the soil composition, or if he has any animals, trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, I got to make them, and doing medicine on his animals. I can guarantee you he's doing medicine on his plants and he's doing medicine on his animals. He's just like, oh, I've just gone to another endeavor. This man will never retire. He doesn't want to. He doesn't need to. He's got a wonderful life. And he's probably, I'm assuming he's married with children. I'm just guessing. And that poor wife, those poor kids, they really didn't have him. His mind, to some degree, wasn't as much on his family as he would have wanted to, and they understand. And these academics, they are essentially they're married to their craft. And now he's probably now settling back, and he's probably enjoying life. I hope he's a grandfather, and has a happy marriage and a wonderful thing, and making up for lost time. Not only with his family, but he's trying to make up for, I bet he misses the time he spent with some nurses. And that wonderful, because I have such wonderful memories, and we're probably, he might be a little bit older than me, but again, post-career, I have such wonderful memories looking back of my time in the trenches, and my time in the trenches, not only with nurses, but my time in the trenches with the physicians and the trainee physicians. And I miss those days, and I bet he does too. I bet he looks back at the fondness and some of the good times he's had with them, and some of the wonderful stress relieving strategies that you have to do, and that wonderful bonding that you do as colleagues, and when you look at each other as teamworks, and you strive to be the best. And he is the absolute example of being the best. So take care. I am optimistic, okay? I am optimistic because I know they eviscerated these guys in their colleagues. They may still be practicing, but oh God, people are questioning them. Doctors, again, if they would attempt to transfer a baby, let's just say they need to transfer someone to a higher level unit, that doctor on that line, he knows that doctor on that line is going to question everything he does. And he knows if that baby is transferred, if there's an emergency situation, he's got to transfer that baby to that thing. He knows they're going to pick apart him more than they would have prior to this whole Lucy Letby saga. I enjoy every one of your comments. I take them all to heart. There are many of you that are in the medical field that are giving me some wonderful tips, wonderful kind of correct my homework I want you to do. But you're also leading me down other avenues too. So again, I view this as a wonderful collaborative effort, and I'm glad I'm doing it, and I'm glad that you're reading it, and I hope you get something out of this. I'm probably getting more from you than you are getting from me. So goodbye. It's lunchtime, and I'm about 15 minutes late. I got to go feed the Empress. So take care. Bye bye.